Are you intimidated by the thought of driving in Italy? Have you heard horror stories about Italian drivers?
Well, driving in Italy can be interesting, but don't worry, we've got you covered.
In this video, we'll show you how to drive like a pro so you can get off the beaten path and explore Italy beyond the major cities.
But first, let's talk about when it makes sense to drive and when it doesn't. If you're planning on visiting the major cities, then it probably doesn't make sense to drive. Take the train. The Italian train system is fast and affordable, and it goes to all the major cities and towns.
But if you'd like to visit the small towns and villages out in the countryside, you will need a car, because public transportation may not be convenient or even available.
Before we get into our driving tips, let's first dispel the notion that Italians are crazy drivers. Actually, they're some of the best drivers in the world. Now, they are aggressive drivers, but they're also defensive drivers. They're always paying attention to what's going on around them, and they never assume that everyone else is going to do what they're supposed to do. Whereas we Americans, we drive along assuming people will do what they're supposed to do, and when they don't do what they're supposed to do, we end up having an accident.
So now let's talk about some driving tips. We'll cover things like how to avoid a speeding ticket and other fines, how to drive on the highway, and what are some of the unfamiliar signs you might see, and how do you park in a city, because it's a little different system than generally we use here in the US.
So let's start with renting a car. You decided to rent a car. The first thing you need to know is that you will be able to find all the same rental car companies that you will find in the United States, plus some others. But you'll see Avis and Hertz and Dollar and Budget and all the rest.
But rather than booking directly with these companies, we found that it's better to go through a company called Auto Europe. It's an aggregator that works with all these different car companies. You can then in one place see what all your options are. I've found that their prices tend to be lower than booking with the agency directly. You pay at the time of reservation, but you can cancel it up to 48 hours in advance. So it's a way to get the best value on a rental car in Italy. In addition to renting a car, there's another option that we can talk about. Stick around to the end and we'll go through all the options and tell you how you might be able to save quite a bit of money.
In Europe, most people still drive with a stick shift or manual transmission. So when you rent a car, that's likely what you're going to get unless you specify otherwise, unless you specify that you want an automatic. And sometimes there's a premium for an automatic, sometimes not. But just be sure and check.
When you go to pick up your car at the airport or the train station, you'll need your passport, your driver's license, and the credit card you use to book the reservation. Now, there's another document called an International Driving Permit, which you may or may not, likely not, need to rent the car. And all it is something that translates your language, your license from English into Italian in this case. Now, it is important to have that if you're stopped by the police. So it's very smart to get that international driving permit before you go. It's very easy to get at any AAA office. They'll take your picture, fill out the form, and give you the permit on the spot. It costs about $20. Either when you rent the car online or when you go to pick it up, they'll ask you what sort of insurance coverage you get. And I know most of us in the US just decline that and rely on our personal insurance. But we highly recommend that in Italy you get the insurance. And despite the fact that your credit card company will say they provide insurance there, it's a very difficult process to get them to repay. We have a personal story about that. We were driving along one day and a rock was thrown up by a truck and it cracked our windshield. Totally not our fault. When we took it back to Hertz at the Rome airport, they immediately charged me €750, and all they gave me at the time was just a statement that said that they charged me €750 for this accident. Now, when I went to the rental car insurance, they said to get my money back, I had to have an estimate in advance of the repair, invoice after it was billed, and I couldn't get any of those things from Hertz because that's not the process that they're using. So we were essentially out that €750 because we hadn't bought the insurance in advance.
So now you've picked up your rental car, let's talk about driving. Now, a lot of things will look familiar to you when you get out on the road. For example, They drive on the right, just like we do in the United States. The traffic lights are red, green, and yellow. And stop signs look exactly like they do back home. Now, one thing that may not be familiar to you is that in Italy, you may not turn right on red. That is an absolute no-no. So don't do that.
Let me talk a little bit about the road signs in Italy. A lot of them will be very familiar, but some of them are different and important to know. So let me show you some of them and what they mean. Anne mentioned that the stop sign is the same as you're probably used to, as is the yield sign. It also looks very familiar. And there are a number of other signs that will be familiar to you, though the shape is a little different, like this one that indicates the road narrows. Now there's a variation on this that shows it's a one-lane road, but the red arrow indicates that that side of the traffic must give way to the traffic going the other direction. A couple of other important signs is this puzzling one that looks like a blank circle. This means no entry unless you're authorized, and you and I are not authorized. And then this one means no entry for anyone. All of these signs that have got the red circle on the outside are really traffic rules. A couple of important parking signs. This one with the slash through it indicates that there's no parking, and the one with the cross in it indicates that there's no stopping or standing. Another no parking sign you'll see, and this one's on the side of a building rather than a sign, indicates that there's a driveway there and you shouldn't park in front of it. There's some prohibition signs that have a partner. This one indicates no passing, and this one that's gray with the line through it indicates the end of the no passing zone. And you'll see other ones that look like this. This blue arrow indicates you must turn the direction of the arrow, while a one-way street is indicated with this long skinny arrow. You'll see this bullseye near town. It indicates the centro, or the center of the town, so follow the arrow there if you'd like to go into the center. Direction signs are green if it points you to an Autostrada route, which is a toll highway, and blue for all the other routes. Now my favorite is this exclamation point on the sign, because it always makes me laugh, but it indicates some sort of hazard or rule that doesn't have its own sign. So these are most of the signs, and we'll cover a couple of others as we go through the rest.
One thing you may not be that used to are roundabouts. We don't have that many of them in the United States, but they're everywhere in Italy. And they serve as both traffic calmers and also as intersections. When you're entering a roundabout, recognize that the cars that are in the roundabout already have the right of way. So you need to wait until there's a gap or a space before you can merge into the traffic. So you need to look to your left to make sure no one is coming. And when you see a gap, go. Because if you hesitate or wait too long for someone to stop, they're never going to stop. So just go, or you'll be there all day.
While you're traveling by car in Italy, you'll almost certainly use an Autostrada. That's their version of a toll highway. And to use it, when you get on, you take a ticket called the biglietto, and then you're going to pay when you get off. And the amount you pay depends on the distance you've traveled. Some people think you can drive as fast as you want on an Autostrada. And you'll see Italians driving extremely fast, though the official speed limit is 130 kilometers per hour, about just over 80 miles an hour. And one thing that's a little confusing is on an Autostrada and on other highways, when you're traveling the normal speed, it isn't posted. So you won't see the signs that say 130, but unless it says something else, you can assume that that's true. Now, because there is this limit of 130, it's possible to get a traffic ticket. And all of the ticketing is done by automatic machines that measure your speed, a speed camera. So don't think you've avoided a ticket if you don't get stopped by the police, because that's not how they handle speeding violations in Italy. What will happen is that months later, usually, you'll get a notice through your rental car company that you need to pay the fine for the speeding, plus their administrative fee, which can add up to in the hundreds of dollars, because we've had a couple of experiences of this, of having missed the speed cameras and been going a little bit too fast. Their tolerance is very low. It's just a couple of % over the posted speed limit.
So when you're on the Autostrada, it's really important to stay up with the flow of the traffic. So the slowest cars and trucks should stay on the right, and the left lane is for passing only. So if you pull out into the left lane to pass a slower car, you need to pull back to the right. as soon as you've passed that car or those cars. Otherwise, you will see somebody getting right up on your tail and flashing their lights at you, which means get to the right so I can go by. When you get ready to exit the Autostrada and pay your toll, it's really important that you get in the correct lane. So there will be lanes for cash, paying by credit card, sometimes combined, and then there's a lane for telepass. And telepass is like an easy pass in the United States. Whatever you do, don't get in that lane, because that's only for people who have a transponder on their car. Otherwise, you're going to get a huge fine. So when you get up to the toll booth and you get to the machine, you'll insert your ticket in the little slot where it's indicated, and then you'll insert your credit card into the slot, or nowadays they have contactless payment where you can just tap your card on the little thing and it'll take your payment and it'll say arrivederci.
One other note about traveling on the Autostrada is they make it very easy to stop and get gas or to get something to eat. Fairly frequently, sometimes every 30 or 40 kilometers, there'll be something called an area servizio, or service area. And in each of these, there's generally a restaurant under some different brand names, Sarni and Autogrill being two of them. And in fact, Autogrill has sort of become the generic term for these. Inside them, they've got pretty good sandwiches, a place, as in any Italian restaurant, to get coffee, and nice bathrooms, and you can also fill up on gas.
Okay, one other note about the service areas like Autogrill and Sarni, etc., is that when you go in and you want to order something like a cup of coffee or a slice of pizza or a sandwich, you go up and you sort of look at the counter, you see what they've got to choose from, you decide what you want, then you go to the cashier, you tell them what you want to order, and you pay for it, and then they'll give you a little receipt that you then take over to the counter where the server is, who will give you whatever it is that you ordered. That's one thing. The second thing is sort of an amusing thing you'll notice is in order to get out after you've eaten and gone to the bathroom and so forth, they lead you down these aisles of impulse items, and you can't get out without passing aisles full of toys, candies, cookies, limoncello, all sorts of other things.
Besides getting food at a service area, it's also a good place to get gas, or I should say fuel, because the car will either take gasoline, called benzina, or diesel, called gasoio. And diesel cars are very common in Italy, so it's important that you know which one it is before you pull into a station. Now, at stations on the Autostrada and many others, you have two options. One is for them to fill up your tank, and that's called servizio, first full service. The other one is for you to do it yourself, and that is they use the word self for that. Now, it's quite a bit cheaper to use the self-service option, but it's a little trickier because you're going to need to, in advance of pumping your gas, you'll go to a machine next to the pump and put in either cash or your credit card or a debit card. And the complication comes in is that to use a credit card in almost every case, you need to have a PIN number. And at least in the US, we don't have those for very many cards. So it really won't allow you to use a credit card. Some of them will allow you to use a debit card with a PIN, but it's a bit hit or miss. So it's better to not let yourself get down too low on gas, particularly if you're not on the Autostrada and you're out in the countryside where you may not find a station open that has a servizio option. When you come up to a gas station, you'll see a board with prices on it, but don't get too excited because it's under €2. They measure gas in a different way in Italy. They use liters, which is just over a quarter of a gallon. So it turns out that the price per gallon is going to be fairly high. Now, it's mitigated to some degree by most of the cars in Italy are small and much more fuel efficient. But still, it's going to be a higher expense than you might be used to fill your car.
Speed traps are not only on the Autostrada, but also on secondary roads and in towns. And what they are these boxes by the side of the road that will clock your speed as you go by. And they're called Autovelox. And if you go more than a few kilometers over the speed limit, you will get issued a ticket. And like the tickets you get from speeding on the Autostrada, you probably won't get it for months after you get home from your trip. and you get a bill from your car rental company with the fine that you owe, as well as a processing fee that you owe to the rental car company.
Now let's touch on parking. Parking spaces are outlined in either yellow, white, or blue. The yellow ones are restricted, meaning it's for handicapped or for the police or for something special. So don't go into and park in those. You'll certainly regret that. On the other side of the coin, you've got the white spaces, and those are free. So those are the best ones to find. Now, in some of these P areas, what you need to do is use what's called a disco horario, where you set the amount, your arrival time on it, and then on the sign it will say you can stay free for 2 hours or whatever. And that lets them know when they're walking by whether you've been there for 2 hours or more. Now, the third color, blue, it means you have to pay. And usually you pay by finding a machine nearby where you're parking with a big P on it, where you go and you buy a ticket for the amount of time you're going to be staying, and then you take that and put it on the dashboard of your car. On the sign that tells you whether you can park there, there'll generally be hours posted. And you need to look carefully at what it says, because there's a different symbol for what you can do on Sundays and holidays and what you can do on weekdays. But the sign will tell you whatever the prohibition is during a period of time. So it's very common to have to pay for parking, say, from 9 in the morning until 1, and then not again until 4, until 8 o'clock at night in the evening. In many places in Italy, they use an app called Easy Park. And all you then need to have is the license plate of your car and the number of the zone that you're parking in. And that's very convenient, because you can also then add time when you're away from the space if you've underestimated the amount of time that you're going to need to park.
One thing you'll notice about parking spaces in Italy, whether it's in an outdoor parking lot or an indoor parking facility, the spaces are tiny. And usually there's only just a few inches between one car and the car next to it, which is one reason why in Italy, when you turn off your car, the side mirrors fold in, because there wouldn't be enough room for the mirrors to stick out and not hit the car next to it. And you would be amazed at the teeny tiny spaces that Italians are able to maneuver their cars into, and very quickly and easily. I'm always astounded.
Something you really need to be aware of are these zones in cities and towns called ZTL, which stands for Zona Traffico Limitata, which means a traffic limited zone. And these are places where you can only go in if you're authorized, when it's active. And they're well posted, though you need to make sure you look for the signs, and often it will be an electronic sign in green, meaning it's not active and you can go into it, or red, meaning you have to have this authorization to go in. Now, if you go in at the wrong time, you will get a fine in the ways we've talked about and get that ticket later in the mail. Now, you may ask how I know this, but sometimes tourists will go into a ZTL looking for something because their GPS has told them that they can go that way, and then not find what they're looking for, so make another attempt at it and go back into the ZTL. I happened to do that in Pisa and got a double fine for entering the ZTL at the same place twice within about 10 minutes. So you need to be very careful of these zones, and they're becoming more and more common in Italian cities.
As you drive through towns or other populated areas, you will see pedestrian crossings or crosswalks, also called in Italian strisce pedonali. And those are important because when somebody wants to step into cross the street, you must stop. You must always stop for the pedestrians crossing the street. And they take this very seriously in Italy, so be on the lookout.
Earlier, I promised you a tip for an alternative to renting that might save you a lot of money. And it's by leasing a car. It's actually where you purchase it for a short period of time and then sell it back. This is a program that's special in France, and 3 French companies offer this. And it's really a great deal if you're going to be there for more than 3.5 or 4 weeks. That's where it starts to become more economical. And some of the reasons it's really good are that you get cars that have got quite a bit of power, they're brand new, and they come with full insurance, and anybody in your family can drive it. So it's a lot of peace of mind. You don't need to pay for that extra insurance that we talked about before. And you get a really fun car to drive. We generally do that if we're there for longer than that period of time, and sometimes even when it's a little shorter because it's such a nice thing to have. So now you're ready to hit the road. But if you've decided that the train is better for your trip, watch this video. Buon viaggio!